Friday night, evidence-based triathlete.
Friday night.
I,
It's so weird. It's Friday night and we're going to talk about racing, and we haven't, it's the off season.
yeah,
Next race isn't for still a couple more months, but it's time to talk about racing because that's what we do. It's triathlon.
that's right. Well, it's nice to have races that we really think are going to happen and work towards. And I know we've been through this weird period this last couple of years, but this is a good time to actually be thinking about races because you can get ahead of the curve
Yep.
on preparing and doing some things to get ready for races. So I have a feeling this is going to be story time night with you and I telling stories of what's happened during races. So
I don't even know what you're talking about. Every race I've ever done has just went like exactly to plan. And it's weird. Every race, it's a new PR. It's so
yeah.
strange. Like, I don't know, maybe it's just me. That's not you.
No, I don't think so. No.
It is so interesting, right? Is that I'm actually thinking back to like as you brought up this topic, and it's thinking back to like how many races have I ever done that actually everything went perfect,
Mm.
and zero.
It doesn't, yeah, I don't know.
Like honestly, now I gotta be honest with you, probably there was a few sprint races
Yeah.
where I feel like I didn't actually make a mistake.
Hmm.
um Maybe one or two Olympic races,
Hmm.
but any long course race, there's been mistakes.
Yeah, well, okay, I was going to ask you to define perfect. So, but I think maybe you just did is, mistakes made. And yeah, I think it's hard not to make a mistake because you are trying to, take some chances at times. And sometimes sometimes you choose red and you sure chose black.
Well, yeah, we can think of the Matrix, right? What pill did you take, right?
Yeah, right, right.
And John, like I love that you said you take chances, because it's really interesting, right? When you read a lot of blogs
Hmm.
and posts, a lot of people say don't take chances. Like,
Hmm.
stick to your plan, stick to your
Hmm.
plan, have your plan, stick to it. I kind of disagree, because there's race dynamics that happen. And yes, should you stick to an overall plan? I think so, but you also have to know when to deviate from that plan,
Yeah, yeah.
and and go with it and actually race the race.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, yeah, I obviously I listen to a lot of podcasts, even with professional triathletes, and professional triathletes are super fun to listen to, right?
Hmm.
Because they're racing to race. It,
Hmm.
the one I listened to was earlier this week, and they were talking about Blumenfeld
Hmm.
and the Olympic champ, winning the Olympics. Nobody knows his time. Like, he won,
Yeah,
right?
right, right.
If he would have won 10 minutes slower, doesn't
Hmm.
nobody cares.
No.
He won.
Hmm.
And sometimes in racing, especially if you want to do well, you actually have to take a chance.
Hmm.
But here's the thing: is if you take a chance and something ends up going bad because you took a chance, that's
Yeah.
okay, right?
Right.
You took the chance. It's a calculated risk, and you failed,
Hmm.
or the plan didn't go to fruition. Maybe you didn't fail, but the plan didn't go to fruition. I've done it before where, and I'll just tell you a quick story. In a 70.3 race, a guy was just running side by side with me, and then he kind of inched in front of me, and I could see he was in the same age group as I was, and we
Hmm.
were going fast. Like, now we're looking for, like, I'm looking for a top 5-ish finish.
Yeah.
And so he goes in front of me, and I didn't stick to my plan anymore, right? It's like, I have got to stick with this guy.
Hmm.
And with 2K to go, you don't have much left in the tank, and mentally you don't either, but I got to stick with him. And so we get to the next aid station. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to take a drink. So second to last aid station.
Right.
So I can get in front of him. And I think that if I get in front of him and I put in a hard effort right now, maybe I'll mentally demoralize him,
Hmm.
right? And these are
Hmm.
the things that go on in
Oh
your
yeah,
in
yeah.
your brain. It's like, okay, maybe I can break this guy.
Hmm.
So I do it. He slows down, gets a drink, and then he actually demoralizes me, because then he catches me and passes me again.
Ah,
And then I'm like, oh, my gamble didn't
yeah.
work, because I spiked my heart rate a little bit,
Right.
to try it. And now it's just like, oh, now I got to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it comes down to a sprint with like 200-300 meters to go. And I honestly,
Yeah,
I had
right.
nothing left. And I don't know if I wouldn't have put that little surge in there,
Yeah, right, right.
would I actually have been able to out sprint him at the end? I mean, I honestly, I don't know, but I still, this is like 5 years ago. And I
Mm-hmm.
still remember the chance I took, but I don't regret it. And I don't consider it a mistake.
Mm-hmm. No, and Mark Allen, he talks about the race he had with Dave Scott,
Yep.
Iron War, and it almost sounds like that same story. And he talks about how there was just something that happened, and he knew that was the time to go,
Yep.
and it worked for him. And so it's a chance though, because maybe it's not the time to go. And in Bloomfeld, you mentioned him in the Olympics. I mean, I think we were all watching that and saw him take off, what with a 1K left, was it?
1K to go. Yeah.
And I know I was like, that's way too early, but it was in his mind to his strength, and that was the time for him to, to use his strength. And so but it's a chance. I mean, you just you don't know until you try it. And that's the beauty, and that's the fun of racing, is to take those risks, and sometimes they pay off, and
Well, and
sometimes they
Josh,
don't.
it's interesting too, right? Because especially in long course triathlon, we don't get a chance to practice that.
Yeah, right,
Like, never in training will I have swam 1.2, ridden 56 hard,
right.
ran 11K, or sorry, 11 miles hard, and then had to push.
Mm-hmm,
Like,
mm-hmm.
that will never ever happen in training.
Right.
So if I don't try it then, maybe I would never know the answer.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And it's the same with, like, I've tried before to negative split a 70.3 run. You probably
Mm-hmm,
have tried the same.
mm-hmm,
Go out a little easier and then negative split. And I've never been able to do it.
mm-hmm,
So I don't even think about that anymore.
mm-hmm,
I've tried it a few times to see if it would be successful, and it's actually produced slower runs for me.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But it took me to get to a race to do it.
Yeah, right.
Because once again, I can never set up that scenario in a training race.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably even worse than an Ironman, right? Like, when will you ever be that fatigued in training and
Yeah.
get to the point, even like, let's say the back half of a marathon or the last 75% of that marathon, you're never going to be in that situation in training.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have to try things in the race.
Yeah. No, for sure. And that's the beauty of being able to do multiple races and trying to pack in some different races throughout the year. And some races, like I'll put a plug in for the Las Vegas Tri Club races. Those are great races to try something different that you wouldn't normally do during a race. Try different strategy, either go easy on the bike, hard on the run, or go hard on the bike, easy on the, whatever it is, you can set up something that you can learn from, so that when you are in a race situation and you are coming down that finish line, you're given your best chance to be successful. So I don't know if people have picked up, but our theme for tonight is going to be race day issues. And so we've started off talking with strategy. I think we'll come back to strategy again. But there's a lot of things that happen during the course of a race that you have to adapt to. And I don't know, what are some things that you've had to
Well,
adapt to?
let's actually I want to give a quick quote. Okay.
Okay.
And it's a pretty famous one. It's a Mike Tyson quote. Everyone's got a great plan until they get punched in the face. And it's perfect in triathlon, right? Everyone's got a plan for their swim until they get kicked in the face.
Yeah.
And it's how you respond to
Mm-hmm.
that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So whatever the case is in triathlon, something usually is going to kick your plan in the face a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to, in my mind, you've got to overcome,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got to solve the problem at hand.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the swim. Once again, issues are going to happen. So
Yep.
if your plan is, hey, I'm going to draft off people, I'm going to be on their feet, and all of a sudden someone in front of you starts breaststroking and you're not paying attention and you get kicked in the face
Mm-hmm.
and your goggles fly off, or
Mm-hmm.
get packed it into your skull,
Yeah. Right.
right? Once again, you're not going to train for that,
Mm-mm.
right? No one's going to go out and say, hey, punch me in the face and let's keep swimming. That just doesn't happen. So you almost, in my mind, got to almost anticipate that's going to happen and mentally kind of play that role. So, I mean, John, you're a very good swimmer and you're often front of the pack swimmer, but that means there's a lot more action sometimes, especially in some of the bigger races. And there's a lot more contact probably as well, especially, you know, when you're in a relatively fast group. I mean, I'm sure you've been kicked, punched, spit on, rolled over.
Well, I've got a few stories, but I'll tell you that what happens is the one wave, the faster swimmers often will catch the previous wave that's taken off, and so that's where you can get the intermixing of different swim styles or abilities, and that's sometimes the most dangerous area is because you come up on someone and they're doing breaststroke, the water may be murky or it's a turn, but you've got I like this, but there are ways to practice how to swim safe to avoid getting kicked in the head. And that's where, you know, doing some group open water swims becomes really helpful, where you're swimming next to each other. Whenever I swim with my wife, I always go over and I swim next to her and push her, and she gets really mad at me. But
Sure, she loves that.
Yeah, I'm trying to help her. So, but you get used to it. But I really like what you said in terms of your goggles getting kicked off. You've got to know how to adjust your goggles, treading water or swimming, clearing your goggles, readjusting them. You've got to be comfortable doing that. And when you get comfortable, you realize that you really don't lose any time. If your goggles are get off a little kiltered, you just get them fixed and you'll have a better swim time than if you try to swim with goggles that are, you know, one's filling up with water and what have you.
Have you ever seen somebody at the swim finish swimming with their goggles in their hands?
I have not, but yeah.
Oh, I've seen this.
Yeah. I've seen people get out without their goggles and
without their goggles. I've actually seen somebody with they're swimming and it's in their hand. I'm like, stop and put them on. Or throw them away. Like, don't, you know, you're absolutely right. You got, you know, so that's one thing is to kind of prepare for that. But then even like you said, preparing by swimming in groups. But the truth of the matter is, John, this is oftentimes a very a solitary sport. I know a lot of people that they train on their own. They go to the pool on their own, and they don't have that ability necessarily to do that, or that social network to do that. So you're right. Like you need to have a plan for when that happens, but also a plan for if you do get rolled over. You know, I've heard horror stories of people getting like rolled over or shoulder pulled and them getting so mad.
Yeah, right.
Like that's my thing. Like I understand when I'm in a triathlon, people are going to hit me.
Yeah. And it's not on purpose most of the time.
But
it's
even
not
if
on purpose.
Even if someone rolls over me on purpose, they're being a total jerk. It does nothing for me if I get mad at that person.
And I think that's a great point, and you've got to have the right mindset. And just one story here. I think I've told you this one before. My brother and I were doing Daring Lake Triathlon back in New York, and we were on the start line, and we're in the water. We knew it was going to be a fast start. We're looking around at who else was at the race, and we're like, okay, we really got to get out. And my brother was pretty good as well, and so he told me this later. I didn't even know what happened, but the gun went off. We were standing shoulder to shoulder with each other, and apparently, I really don't think it was me. I swung my hand around and knocked him right in the head, right on the start. This is what he says. I think it was somebody else. This was my little brother too. So
note to self: don't line up beside you in a race.
And I never felt it. I never knew it until afterwards. And he was telling me the story. I was like, oh, I had no idea. Sorry about that. But so my point is that not when you have contact, it doesn't mean that someone's coming after you. And so you're spot on. Don't get upset. Just realize you got to have course correction, or you got to be able to deal with it. And sometimes it's us that's off course. It's not the other person that's going off course. It may be us zigzagging rather than someone zigzagging in front of us. So,
well, I can remember one time I was racing somewhere along the line, and I was drafting off somebody and I hit their feet too many
Yep.
times.
Yep.
3 was too many for this person.
Mm-hmm.
They literally rolled over on their back, started like waving their finger and yelling at me. You know what I did?
No.
Not a damn thing.
Yeah, just keep swimming.
Just keep swimming, let them get up further ahead, and I got right behind them again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I didn't get, like, I wasn't embarrassed by it.
No.
I wasn't, oh, I shouldn't do that, because that's actually what triathlon is, unfortunately, is about, is people getting on your feet and touching your feet. And it happens to me.
Yeah.
And I don't, if someone's on my feet, it doesn't affect me. You're touching my toes every now and then.
Well,
doesn't
and
affect me.
mechanically, the swimmer in front still gets, it's weird, but
They get a
the swimmer in
draft.
front still actually gets some benefit. So when I get someone touching my toes, I'm like, okay, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I don't mind that, because I know mechanically I'm getting a little bit of draft. I know that's weird. I'm in front, but I'm getting some benefit of having someone right behind me or right at my side. And so it's a mindset, and really.
But yeah, I contend in triathlon in general, keeping your cool in these situations, we'll talk about some situations on the bike as well,
Yeah.
is you'll be winning if you can keep mentally cool and understand no one's out there to hurt you.
No.
It is really an individual thing. And I've actually seen people get really upset in the water.
Yeah.
And
it's not worth it.
It's not worth it. You know, it's not going to get you to the finish line any faster by you getting upset with somebody.
Yeah.
So, and the same, I mean, we can just jump right into that. It's the same on the bike.
Yeah.
I've seen people almost come to blows on the bike.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh, you're not riding right, and this and this and this. Once again, I could care less about anybody else. Like, don't get me wrong, about safety, I'm all about it. But if for example, somebody like cuts me off a little bit, I should be aware. Like, if someone's passing me and I notice their wheels coming over, I got to be aware of that. Remember, the rule is, as soon as their front wheel gets to your front wheel, you have to drop back. That's the rule. So if you keep pushing harder and they cut you off a little bit, it's your fault.
Yeah, right.
And I've been yelled at by people for, like, coming across, and I never touched them. I never, there was no contact or anything. And people are, you don't know how to ride. I had a guy one time that I passed him like that. He was probably going 2 or 3 miles an hour slower than me. And maybe a minute later, he comes hammering up, out of breath. You cut me off, blah, 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 blah. And you know what I did? Just waved.
Just ride. Yeah.
Just ride, because he just burned like all of his matches.
Yeah. Right.
Like, to speed up to come yell at me.
Yeah.
When there was nothing, I did nothing illegal. I did nothing wrong. He just didn't like the way I came across.
Yeah.
And once again, his emotions got the better of him. And the truth of the matter is, John, I could have, or he could have, ruined his own race right there.
That's right. Yeah. No, totally.
And then when he finishes and doesn't do well, he's going to be like, oh, that guy, it was his fault. He cut me off.
Well, and there are rules regarding sportsmanship. And that type of yelling, when it gets to that level, and, any swearing, I mean, people can get disqualified and have gotten disqualified for that. So keep your cool. All right. So on the swim, we've got a couple of good tips here. Is one, know how to adjust your goggles in open water, treading water, or even I practice doing it even in a pool. Halfway through the pool, I'll be swimming. I'll just clear my goggles, get the fog out. So be able to do that. Keep your cool during the swim. Don't try to hurt anyone, but realize that people most likely, if they're bumping into you, aren't trying to hurt you on purpose. Yeah.
I don't think anyone ever goes in triathlon going, I'm going to try and hurt somebody today. I don't see that. Have you ever heard of one other technique of people? So, like, let's say you swim by yourself and you have your own lane. They take a couple of kickboards and they just put them in the lane.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So if you hit it,
right.
You're used to actually hitting something, and it's like, whoa, like, but you get to the point where it's not such a surprise anymore. And I think the kickboard or even a pull buoy works well, because it's not enough of resistance to probably like to hurt you, but it's enough to, like, kind of desensitize you. Because I think a lot of people get used to that touching something in the water. And we've
Mhm.
talked about it before, like I think we talked about the jellyfish incident I had where I was touching jellyfish on every stroke, or
Mhm.
just seaweed. I know a lot
Oh,
of people,
freak out
something
with that.
touches them. There's a
Yeah.
little seaweed in the water and they freak out. You're going to swim in the ocean. Guess what's going to happen,
Yeah.
right? Stuff's going to touch you.
Well, when you're swimming, the fish and everything are going to try to get away from you. They're not trying to
Yes.
come towards you.
I've never heard of anyone, jellyfish, yes, but
Yeah.
I've never heard of anyone actually like touching like a bass or
Yeah,
or a
right, right,
trout or something
right.
like. They go away from you. Yeah,
Yeah. I
you're,
was
you're absolutely right.
talking with someone about Ironman Louisville and swimming in the Ohio River, and that's come up in some of our other podcasts.
Yep.
And in the Ohio River, they have 6 foot long catfish. It's just it's
Yeah.
they're
They want
big.
nothing to do with you.
They're not going to come towards you. They're going to avoid you unless you're a super predator. Then
Yeah.
that's a little different. So if you're, I don't know, even in Florida where they do their swims with the alligators, it's
Oh, I've
most of the
done
time.
I've done a few swims down there where, like, I think we talked about before, where there's alligators in the have been in the area,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's unnerving. But once again, they're not really excited to have 1,200 people come swimming
No,
with them
it's
in the morning.
loud. It's
It's
web.
loud.
Now,
It's
and I remember in Lake Las Vegas when I was doing swim support for one of the, I think it was the Iron Girl race. There were dead fish in the water, and
yep.
I tried to clear those out because that would not be fun to come up on a dead fish while you're swimming. So, but at the same time, practice your open water swim. Race day issues. Know that there are things that happen in the water or things that are floating that you may run into, and just be prepared for that. All right, let's see. I'm looking on my list here of race day issues. I've got getting lost.
But I have one more swim one,
Okay.
and that is, if you got to, let's say you went to the race course a day early and you ended a practice swim, remember the lighting will be different the next in
Yeah.
the morning, and don't be surprised when all of a sudden the sun is in your eyes.
Yeah.
And that's once again, that's a race. It can be a race day surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of think about that and have a plan for that. But if it is in your eyes, it is, and you may need a different plan, and that different plan might be just to follow someone else.
Yeah, right. Well, I actually have that on my list there for getting lost during the swim
Oh
because
yeah, getting lost in the swim. Yeah.
yeah, your swim course often at some point is headed into the sun,
Yeah.
and it's hard to see. Indian Wells, man, we turned that that back half of the course, and you're going right into the sun and can't see anything.
Yep.
So that's a race day issue. How do you respond to that? How do you still try to swim, in the direction that the course is headed? And you just got to look for the kayakers. You got to look for where the other swimmers are, and you do need to try to find a buoy. So I'll even do a few strokes of breaststroke just to make sure I'm headed in the right direction. Get that set, and then take off.
Yep.
All
Good.
right, getting lost on the swim. Know your goggle choice. I like that too. That's a good one. All
And then
right, bike.
I guess one more with the goggles is goggles, even new goggles, can fog up on you.
Yep, they will.
Yep. And same thing, like knowing how to clear them as you
Mhm.
swim.
Yep.
It's better to clear them than it
Mhm.
is to swim this back, 3/4 of a triathlon when you can't see.
Yeah. So race day issue, broken goggles while you're standing in line before the start. Unfortunately, I haven't had that happen because I usually make sure I have a good pair of goggles going into race day. So,
Yeah, I've never had that happen, knock on
mhm.
wood. But we've talked about before. I check my goggles before big races. It's always new goggles.
Yep.
Even B races will be last year's race goggles. Yeah,
I always take a second pair with me too, though, just in case.
but not down to the start.
No, no, but I'll have a second pair with me just in case I lose mine.
Yeah,
So,
I always have two pair for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that's being prepared. Race day issues. Be
Hey
prepared to have a
John,
second pair of goggles.
we shouldn't say that because someone else is gonna like forget theirs and they're gonna come to you and me at the race. Like, hey, you said on your podcast that you always have a second pair of goggles, and then we're gonna need it.
I've given out my second pair though.
I have
So.
two.
But yeah, no, that's good. All right, bike. I have getting lost on the bike. Have you ever gotten lost on the bike?
I haven't.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but I know people do,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and maybe that's, a nature of like, I tend to be in in a pretty big group. I don't know.
Hmm.
Um, but I know people that have got lost on the bike.
Yeah.
Um,
Missed a turn or
Missed a
yeah.
turn,
Yeah.
not paying attention.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, that's an interesting one. You know, when we read the stuff, it always says, you should know the course, and then
Yeah.
every time you read the race stuff, says you are responsible to know the course. I would contend number one on that is, I think that rule that they put that in as complete crap,
Hmm.
because I've known the course and then the course gets set up wrong.
Yeah. Right.
And if I turned wrong,
Hmm.
like if I actually followed the course, they might disqualify me.
Hmm.
Right? I've actually had it more than once where it was an out and back, and they had on the thing, it's like, okay, it's 1.5 miles turnaround.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you're at 2 miles.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then and just up the road is the turnaround. I'm like, you know what? You said in your thing, I need to know the course.
Yeah.
I've measured it, it's 1.5. Your direction said 1.5,
Yeah.
but they have a timing mat at where the turn is. What if I turn around at 1.5?
Yeah. Right.
Will I get disqualified?
Hmm. Yeah.
But
That's it.
then, if I take a wrong turn, oh, it's your own fault.
Hmm. Yeah.
I remember at Pumpkin Man one year, a guy turned, when you kind of almost crest the hill and there's a neighborhood to the right.
Yep. Yep.
The guy turned.
Mm.
I yelled, I'm like, that's not the way.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to him later. He's like, I was so sure we had to turn there. I'm like, why? But
Yeah.
there wasn't very many people. Like there was
Right.
only a couple, three or four of us on the hill at the time.
No.
And yeah, that was. But we do
Uh,
silly. People do silly stuff, and that does happen.
well, and I've not gotten lost on the bike, oddly enough, because I've gotten lost a lot on different races. Usually, it is the run
Yeah.
that I'm getting lost on. I guess I get lost on the swim every now and then. I have had to backtrack and get around buoys, but sometimes in long distance events, you especially on single loop long distance bikes, a lot of times you can be alone
Yeah.
for quite a bit of time. And I remember doing Vineman, especially the races that may not have, thousands of people doing them. There may be times that you're really isolated on the course. And I remember doing Vineman and I'm like, am I still on the course? Because there was nobody around. But what I really like is our computers now have the map function.
Yep.
And even on the smaller computers, I can switch it over to that and I can say, oh yeah, okay, I know where I am now.
Or you could have an alert that tells you off course.
Yeah, yeah. I have not done the route. I have not logged that for a race. So,
So actually, I will tell you a story of me getting lost on the bike because I forgot.
okay.
So there used to be a race called the Mojave Death Race, and some people
Mhm.
are
I remember,
familiar
yeah.
with that. COVID kind of shut it out, and then they're not going to have it anymore. But it was a multi-stage team race in the Mojave Desert in June, super hot. And so the team I was on the first year, I was on the same team. I did it twice. We were in first place getting into my first bike leg. I think I did 3 bike legs, 3 runs.
Mhm.
And the bike leg was like 25 miles. And I'm just hammering the watts because I didn't even know these guys. It's like my first time with these guys.
Yep.
I'm hammering the watts, and there's a support vehicle, and we're just going. And we missed the turn by about 5 miles.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden the van's like, stop. And I'm like, what? And they're like, we went the wrong way. And I'm like, what? I mean, I was just crushing
Yeah.
this bike leg. And so, put the bike in the van, drive me back to
Yeah.
the spot where we missed
Yeah.
the turn. And now we're in like 20th spot, right?
Oh boy.
But that was,
Yeah.
and the weird thing is that I'd never been out there. I didn't pre-ride anything, but I did look at the maps.
Hmm.
I had 3 legs and 3 run legs, and just, and
Yeah.
once again, head down, support
Yeah.
vans with you. you're thinking like, if you mess up, they're gonna, they're gonna tell you. But yeah, that I did do that once.
Well, and I think that's why a lot of times you can get lost on a course is because you're going, we always call it going rear brain.
Yeah, no, I honestly, yeah, wasn't thinking at all. It was
That's right. You're not thinking. You're not making necessarily rational decisions. You're not taking signs in. This
yeah,
usually happens to me on the run, and the same type of thing. Is you're just not, you're aware, but you're not fully aware. And
yeah.
so yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, getting lost on the bike. So race day issues. How do you deal with it? You just got to figure out where you got off the course, if you were off course, and then
Get in the van and have them drive you back to the course.
yeah, right, right. All right, well, I got to get caught up on a couple of comments here.
Yep.
So we have Bob asking about doing nutrition, and that is on our list.
Yep.
Race day issues, nutrition. That's a series of podcasts right there. He also says swim issue sounds like a good topic for a training event. Yeah, we really should. And when we've done our swim clinics, I know the people have led those. Mel, Nancy, Dax, they have all talked about these issues and tried to prep people for it. Rick says earplugs for post-swim dizziness, especially cold water. That's a really good tip because
that's a super good tip, especially in cold water, is the wax earplugs.
Yep. So that's good. And Matt says we watched the move the cones a half dozen times at Oceanside at the turn onto the bridge on the run, even between pros. So yeah, the race directors are often making adjustments to the course as you go along, I guess. So
yep, it's true. So actually, the bike issue, so we can actually take in Bob's comment right there. So what do you do when you eject the bottle, right? Or you go to take a gel and you drop it?
Yeah. Well, on long course, you stop and get it, because if that's your nutrition and you're on the bike for hours and hours, that's your plan. It's better to lose a minute or 2 minutes, stop, pick up what you lost, and keep going, as opposed to, in terms of the nutrition plan, trying to then figure it out on the fly and deviate from the plan that you had.
So I want to, and we should, we can talk about this in another podcast too, but I want to say that I think that especially like gels and drinks, if it's just, I get that everyone's got their own brand, but sugar is sugar, carbohydrates are carbohydrates. I personally wouldn't stop because I would just go to the next aid station, get what I need. And I don't care if it's this brand or this brand or this brand. I think that there's a lot of psychology to that. Oh, that this brand is like the magic for my stomach, and it's not going to give me GI issues because I've practiced with this brand. I contend there is very little difference between these brands. That's like, to me, it's like, you got a Golden Delicious apple and you got whatever the red ones are called. Yeah, they look different and their sugar content might be slightly different, but I think in my heart of hearts, there's more psychological issues there than there is actual issues. And, but then again, John, I'm probably like you, I'm a little cheap with my gels and stuff like that. So I collect them from, like, I go to race and then get a few gels here, so I'll take in anything. And maybe that's part of the problem. And
well, no, I agree with you, but at the same time, aid stations aren't going to have Rice Krispie treats or sushi. So
there you go. But yeah, if you drop your sushi, are you really going to pick it up off the ground?
I have done sushi rice during the race at one point. Not sushi, but sushi rice.
Once again, if you get a ball of rice that's on the ground, are you going to pick it up and eat it?
And I do know, just to give you some credit, I do know that you have lost your nutrition on a race and you kept going, because I came up on the nutrition and I saw the bottle and I'm like, hey, that's Ted's bottle.
Ted's bottle. Yeah. And next aid station, just grab 2 gels instead and keep on going, especially in that race in particular. That point was about a 50-mile-an-hour downhill.
Yep.
It would have taken me 200 yards to slow down and then go up against the traffic, and there's no way.
And so Rick adds a comment here: try to be a little ahead on your nutrition. So if you do drop something, you can just keep going. So
and the other thing I would tell you is, and maybe not in like Ironman, but in 70.3, I always have extra. I
Mm-hmm.
actually kind of plan on that I'm going to drop a block or drop
Mm-hmm.
something. And there, to have like 3 or 4 extra gels or whatever, it's not a big deal for me.
Well, okay, so we're getting into nutrition a little bit, and
Yep.
I know we want to get to some other things, but I know how many times have we been on a race and you're on the run course and you see all the gels in someone's race belt that they're not using because they've decided that that's not for them for that race, and so
They
this
finished with
speaks.
6 gels around their
Yeah,
belt.
right. So it speaks to your point that it's hard having a nutrition plan to work. It takes a little bit to get that right, and so it's that's really the fourth discipline
Yeah.
of endurance events. So
Yeah. And once again, like I think that like the nutrition plan, it's once again, especially in long course racing, you can train some of it, but
hmm
at hour 7, 8, 9, 10, you've not been there in training,
yeah.
right? And we hear stories of this all the time. Oh man, I never thought I would want Coke at hour 10 of the Ironman, and it
Yeah.
saved me. And
hmm
they would have never drank a Coke in any of their training,
Yeah.
right? Or, oh man, those pretzels at mile
Oh, the chicken
20,
noodle soup.
or
Yeah.
chicken noodle soup, or
hmm
whatever it is.
Yeah.
And in my talking to people, in my experience, sometimes you just got to go with what looks right. Like
hmm
there's been a few times when I've been doing half Ironmans and I get to an aid station and someone's got like a half banana just ready to go. I'm like, oh my gosh, that looks so perfect right now.
Yep.
But in my training, I would never just grab a half a
hmm
banana.
Right.
But once again, like maybe my psychology is different. Like I don't depend on this brand, this thing at
hmm
this time.
Yeah.
And I think I've trained my gut during training to take
hmm
on different things.
That's good.
And
Yeah.
and because I think we run into a problem when we really depend on one
hmm
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So nutrition, race day issues, that's a tough thing to deal with because once your stomach does go offline,
Oh yeah.
it's tough to get it back online. And so really trying to make the right decisions right from the beginning, even a couple of days ahead is so important. But race day, you've got to adapt and you got to figure out
Yep.
what you need to do to keep moving, either to try to get calories in, or if you can't take anything in, you need to know that you're going to end up just slowing down. And I've had
You
that.
have to,
Yeah.
right? It comes to a point, and I know, John, you've done this,
Mm-hmm.
right? You haven't been able to take food in or nutrition in for a couple hours.
Yeah.
There's no option anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You either have to slow down or stop.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and I've been reading a lot about gut stuff with this, it's if you slow down enough, your gastrointestinal system will kind of reboot.
Yeah.
You can get some food in, not maybe
Mm-hmm.
not you, but
No.
but you can get some food in, and then
Right.
you can respond. And some of this I've been reading it with ultra runners in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So they're doing the 100 milers,
Yep.
and their stomach will shut down, especially at night,
Yeah.
right? Because you're not used to like taking in calories at
Yep.
2 in the morning, 3 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll just have to like basically walk for a couple hours sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and they maybe get a little water in, and that's all they can get in, and then their stomach reboots, and next thing you know,
Mm-hmm.
they get some calories in, and they can speed up.
Yep.
And you're right. This is solving the problem at hand,
Mm-hmm.
and still understanding like and John, you're so good with this. Like, and I'm envious of you with this because you've had these issues and you still finish your races and you're still like, okay, like it was an issue. I
Yeah.
dealt with it the best I could.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I walked for 10 miles
Yeah.
and I finished and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
It's maybe you say you're okay with it. Maybe you're not as okay with it as you say you are, but that's part of the race experience.
Well, no, and you're right. And I'll tell you that this goes back to what we were talking about before. It's a mental approach. I don't know how many, I think I've done like 18 Ironman. I can't tell you all the times, but I can tell you the experiences. And I can say, Ironman New Zealand, boy, I love doing that. I had a terrible time. In essence, my run time was longer than my bike time. And it wasn't a run time, it was a walk time. And
Yep.
sitting and waiting and trying to get things settled. But that's not the part you know that matters to me at the end of the day. And no one remembers no one can point to me and say, hey, you had a terrible time at New Zealand. It's like,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah. How about that 14-hour Ironman you did?
yeah,
You did an Ironman and you went to
yeah,
New Zealand and you did it
right.
and it was awesome.
That's right. And, even Whistler, I remember Laura caught up to me and I was just, unfortunately, have continued to have problems on the run and doubled over. And she told me at one point, she says, you got to pick it up a little bit. You may not even hit the cutoff. And so, you know, that's just the way it is. But you've got to have the mindset. And Laura, we've talked about it. Is when we do these travel races, we really want to be able to have the finish. And so there may be sacrifices we make along the way where we back off the pace to make sure that we're going to finish, because then we can at least have fun talking about the finish. But once you have a DNF, and I've got this on our list to talk about. I don't know if we're going to get to that, but a DNF is tough. They're realities, but it is nice to at least, if you want to finish, you've got to be able to pace out the whole day.
Yep.
When I'm racing and I'm trying to get to an age group spot, then you take some risks.
Yep.
And the risk may pay off or it may not, and you may end up a disastrous time, but you still work to try to finish. And I've got 2 DNFs at iron distance races, and I'm not ashamed of them, and they're learning experiences.
And John, I think it goes back to what we were talking about in the swim and on the bike, is keeping your mind, keeping your head cool, thinking things through. How am I going to adjust to whatever comes to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think of even weather.
Yeah.
And how many races have you done where the weather was optimal?
Yeah. None.
I'm thinking like less than a handful where it was like just perfect, like 60 degrees with a 75-degree water, and no wind or tailwinds everywhere. Like it's not, it doesn't happen. And once again, when the wind picks up and you get upset about it, and you let it get in your head, you're like, oh man, I'm not going to make my 11-hour Ironman finish, or I'm not going to break 5 hours on the half Ironman because the wind, and you get upset with it. That's not going to bode well for you.
No,
and it can be frustrating, and I get that, and it can be disappointing, but you have to take everything in context. We talked about the 70.3 Worlds this year and the crazy weather. That's like, I love that. That was like one of my best memories of a race.
That's right.
Was this crazy weather front that comes through, and it didn't make me upset at all.
No.
Right? I was just like, this is cool. Like, this is going to be a memorable day, and we're going to have awesome stories about it. And was my time 30 minutes slower than basically the same course 5 months earlier or 4 months earlier? Yeah. Who cares? Like, it was a heck of a fun day out there.
Yeah. And a lot of times overcoming those challenges is what you really remember and makes that race endearing. So no, I love it. The St. George, where were you when the storm hit? That's always the question. So I love that one. Yeah. All right, let's switch away from nutrition, but I guess one last race day issue dealing with nutrition issues is sometimes you do need to experiment. You got to try to get something in you, like you said, get some water in. Like when I've had my GI distress, I'll at least try to chew on ice cubes, because that's a little bit slower release of fluids into the GI system, and so maybe you try some grapes. Maybe this sounds terrible, because what's the one rule that we have? Don't try anything new on race day. But sometimes you've got to try to work through that GI distress and get something in. All right, wait, I got to catch up on some comments here. Boy, we've got some good comments.
Actually, let me add one more thing to that, John, really quickly. The one thing that I read, and it kind of bothers me a little bit, is you're having these issues. Take in salt. I would be really careful with that. If you put in something that is basically pure salt, it can actually pull fluid from your body into your intestines, and that can cause GI distress as well. Unless you've practiced with this, like, salt is not a panacea for everything that's going wrong in your training. We've talked about salt and salt content before, but just kind of keep that in mind, because these articles we read for this week, 2 of them, I think, mentioned, oh yeah, when you're struggling, have salt. I'm like,
Yeah.
I think you gotta be careful with that one.
I think so. But that goes back to spend some time on a nutrition plan in terms of how much hydration you need, how many calories you need, because I think the tendency is to over drink and maybe even overeat.
Yeah.
And that's not going to help. So,
Okay. You're right. Overdoing it is just as bad as underdoing it, especially for the GI issues. Yeah.
All right, so let me get caught up. We'll have to go back. We will do more podcasts on nutrition and race day because it is such a big deal. I like this comment from Rick. Always, 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 if they give you access to your bags, check their location on race morning. I have had them moved.
Yeah.
That's a great thing. And okay, race day issue. I've put my helmet in the wrong bag, and so and I discovered it race morning. So it is something good to double check because sometimes you're in the moment, you think you're getting everything set, but you make a mistake. And so one last check, race day morning, look at your bags, make sure they have what you're expecting to have. Now, recently they haven't let you get access to your bags in the morning, so you do need to know.
Yeah, and I guess adding to that is knowing the flow of the transition. There's no reason for you not to know the flow of the transition. I walk through them the day before, and in any races where you have access the day before. If it's a morning setup a race, if it's at all confusing, find landmarks for where your bike is, find landmarks for where your where your T1 and T2 are. That's just stuff you got to know. Because it actually hasn't happened to me, but I've seen people literally lose their bike. They're standing in transition. They're like, I can't find my bike.
Yeah, you can't read during a race. You can't read. You
can't read. It's like, okay, the numbers are here.
Yeah.
And they go down the wrong aisle and everything looks the same, right? You have hundreds of bikes. Everybody's looks the same. Everything looks the same. That is, and I get it. Like you're in race mode and you're not reading properly, but I always like, okay, there's a porta potty there and there's a flag there. And that's all I think about is the porta potty and the flag. I don't even look at the numbers. Because I can't always remember, was I 1,115 or was I 1,511? I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you on big races what I do, and I think you do the same thing. I'll come into transition and I just start saying my number over and over again. 323, 323, 323. And then a volunteer will say, 323 this way. And so I just keep saying the number over and over and over again as I'm running because
I've had volunteers tell me the wrong way.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm saying the number and they're like, okay, down here. I'm like,
but it's even for myself to make sure I'm looking for the right number. I'm looking for 323. I'm looking for, so I keep going and trying to find that number because the brain, it just, it just doesn't always work. All right. So that's a really good tip from Rick. All right, let me keep going here. Defizz Coke, rocket fuel from Bob. Yeah, people like flat Coke and some people like still a little sparkle in it. I actually, at St. George, I noticed on the pro table, they had a bottle of Perrier. And so one of the pros, wanted carbonated drinks during their race. So
I don't know if I ever told you this, but when I was working as an athletic trainer and we were taking teams to Germany, at halftime, they'd bring in like cases of water, and there'd be one case of fizzy water, one case of normal water, and the kids, they'd like open it. Oh God, I couldn't. But in Germany, it's a thing during sports that you have carbonated water.
Interesting.
And I'm just telling you, it's a European thing. And so I'm sure it was a European racer, and that's just what they have.
I prefer carbonated water and carbonated Coke during. I know people say that.
And then I'm going to add one other thing to the Coke. So when I was wearing the continuous glucose monitor and doing a training ride, I was at about hour 4 of a training ride, and my blood glucose was right around 95. I had a Coke, and within 10 minutes, it went to 180.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it really is like, especially if your stomach is empty, it'll shoot your blood sugar up crazy fast. And you can go from feeling relatively crummy to feeling really quite good very fast. Yeah.
That's good. I love it. And Rick says, Coke has saved me a few times. And yes, it will. It is fuel. Let's see. Yeah, Rick says, in 20 years, no one will remember your time, but the number you finished will be remembered. And yeah, that's right. It's not about the time. Yes, there's times where you are competing. I know Rick has competed for the top spot in his age group, and you and I have as well. There are those moments, but there's also moments where you're like, okay, I'm not I'm not shooting for that place. I am shooting for the experience and finishing. So that is important. And one more comment here to get caught up on: 90 degrees or more. This is weather related. Non-wetsuit swim, perfect weather. Yeah. So Rick likes it warm and no
Yep.
wetsuit. So yeah, and that's a good point, because perfect weather for Rick is different than for you versus me versus any. So what's the perfect weather really is an individual thing, and yeah, and so it is
Yeah.
good to look for races for what you think will be a good weather day for you.
I'll add to Rick's one. Perfect weather for me is go race in Canada in the middle of summer and 95 degrees, and no one from Canada is ready for it. And you
Yeah,
do
there you
training
go.
down here,
Yeah.
smash it.
Yeah. Well, okay, so now what I like that, and I like where you're going with this before. Sometimes you don't know what the perfect weather is.
Yeah.
And I've done races where it's been rainy and windy and have had great races. And it's not like I would say, oh, let me go find a windy, rainy day.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
something about that weather on that day on that course ended up being the right weather for the race. So don't shy away from the weather. It is what it is on race day, and you have that mindset to deal with it. But don't always dress like it's Kona. So there are times where you don't want to be in a race singlet. So
So John, how about one other one we'll talk about, and that's I like a mechanical issue on the bike.
yeah, I've got that. I've got a long list here still,
Yeah,
but
so we got lots to go through, but let's talk about mechanical issues on the bike. In particular, the number one thing is you shouldn't have a mechanical other than a flat tire on the bike.
hmm
You really should have, if you can't do it yourself, have a professional that you trust go over your bike, especially before a big race.
hmm
Like you know, basically there's no excuse for like bolts not being tightened for whatever the case may be. And yeah, it's going to happen. I think we talked about it before. I did break a fork
Yep.
in a
Yeah.
race.
Right.
Um, but once again, it was nobody's fault. It just happened.
hmm
But a flat tire does happen.
Yep.
And and once again, we've talked about this before. Professional triathletes actually practice changing
hmm
tires and tubes.
Yep.
And you know, if you can get it down to 2 minutes in a long course race, that's
hmm
nothing,
Yeah.
right? Now, if it takes you 20 minutes and
hmm
you're frustrated and
Yep.
you're, I mean, really, you should know how you should know how to use your tools that you do have. You should once again have tools, know how to use them with the setup you have, right? Oh, well, I've never practiced with my race tires, only with my training tires, and then you can't get the
hmm
race tire off. It's just, I've had it happen. I think I've had 3 races where I've got a flat tire,
Yep.
and each time it's been, for me, I was pretty happy. It was like 4 minutes, 3-4 minutes each time. And it is what it is. And, it's gonna happen to you.
hmm
Um, the other big thing is when you get going again, it's not 450 watts, eyes bulging out of your head to
Yeah.
catch up.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you can go a little harder because you had a little rest,
hmm
but it's not about, like, you're not going to make that time back up.
I got a story about that.
You made the
So
time
yeah,
back up.
yeah. So one, we have a podcast on what's in your toolkit. We probably need
Right.
to do that again as we approach the season of training outdoors. You got to know what's in your toolkit. You got to make sure you've got everything you need and you can access it easily, and you know how to get it, and you know how to use the tools to get going. I think the issue with bike maintenance is really critical when you're traveling,
Yep.
and whether you're putting your bike in the car, or you're putting it, you're taking it apart to put it in a bike box. and then you're putting it back together. That's where you really need to spend some time prior to race day to making sure that every bolt is tightened to where it's supposed to be, not over tightened, but just tightened to where it's supposed to be. And so, and go get out for some pre-race rides to double check the derailleur, make sure the derailleur hanger isn't bent or
Yep.
something crazy has happened, and you've got to deal with that. But no, your point of, once you get going again after a flat, stick with the plan you had. Yeah, when I did Whistler, I ended up with 2 flats. And after the second one, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go for it. And because I was behind, and I trained hard for that race and really went pretty hard, and I paid the price pretty badly. So that was not the right way to go. And I ended up having a real tough run day that day, but it was fun on the bike trying to play catch up and thinking it was all going to work
And
out.
if it was an aqua bike, you'd been just fine.
Yeah.
And I guess that's another thing. Unless you sign up for an aqua bike, remember it's not an aqua bike. You actually still have to run.
That's right. That's right. All right. So I've got that. How about chain drop during?
Oh yeah, I've actually had this happen in a race.
Yeah. What do you do
times.
when your chain has cutting off your big ring in the front? What do you do?
Okay. Number one, don't panic.
Yeah.
Like number one rule, don't panic.
Mm-hmm.
It depends which way it falls off. Obviously, normally it falls off into the center on the inside, but I've had it fall off onto the outside.
Mm-hmm.
If it falls off onto the outside, shift calmly, shift into the small chain ring, and lean your bike towards the small chain ring, and slowly watch it and see if you can get a link or two on. I've actually had it happen in a half Ironman, this exact scenario, and I was just super calm. The coolest thing was this, is that a guy passed me when it was happening, and I ended up passing him later, and he's like, man, you're one cool customer with that chain dropping. He actually said it to me as I repassed him, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't panic.
Yeah, that's right.
If it falls to the inside, you got to be even more careful, because it can get wedged in really, really. Like you can't get it out.
Pedaling as soon as you know it's off.
If it goes to the inside, stop pedaling instantly. And this, to me, you got to get off the bike.
Yep.
You got to stop pedaling instantly.
Yep.
Get off the bike. Get your hands dirty. Get it back on. But if you keep pedaling, it'll wedge in there, and your day honestly could be over.
The frames today have a much more of narrow tolerance between the inner big ring, chain ring, and the frame, and so you can just pedal one stroke, and that chain can get wrapped up underneath there and stuck between the chain stay and the big chain ring, and it can do some damage to the chain stay. Now, back in the day when I was riding my Schwinn Varsity steel bike. Yeah, if it drops off, it's like, okay, I'll just work it back on while I'm pedaling, and no big deal. But with that, I agree with you. You got to stop pedaling and get off your bike, get it back on, and then go.
Yeah, they do make chain catchers. I rode a chain catcher for years. I don't anymore, but now I think with the Di2 shifting, it just doesn't seem to me like I don't drop to the inside anymore. I've dropped to the outside a few times, but so if this is something that's happened to you, get a chain catcher and or figure out what the problem is. Like, why is this happening? So are my limit screws wrong? Is my chain too loose? So do I have too many links in the chain? And there are ways to figure that out. That's another reason. Or am I cross chaining and aggressively cross chaining? And then the other one that happens is when you switch the front and the rear mech at the same time. In a radical chain, so you're really dropping the tension quickly. So don't do that. But I get it in racing. Sometimes you don't think, you're like, oh, I got to switch this and this and this super quickly. I actually really try. I know you have synchro shift on your bike. I don't have sinker shift turned on. I don't like to switch my front and rear at the same time
No, right,
because the
right.
tension change.
Yeah. And Rick just commented, yeah, chain catcher. Yeah, and one time system or one where you don't have a front
Yeah, one by.
one by. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, where you don't have a front derailleur, then you don't have to worry about chain drops. So
Yeah,
that's always,
the one by issue, if we didn't live here where it's hilly everywhere,
hmm
I would probably go with a one by. Or I was in Arizona recently and I played Mega Bucks. I didn't win or whatever it was called, Powerball. I would have
yeah,
another bike, exact same setup with a one by.
yeah,
Um, but yes, I think a one by. If you didn't have to go race in St. George and Oceanside,
yeah.
a
I
one
know
by.
a couple of our local athletes. They really enjoy the one by. So I haven't explored it too much, but yeah, it's I don't yeah. Yeah, I don't know. There's lots of things that new technology keep coming out. So we'll see. We'll see if that will be the next wave.
Yep.
All right, so let's see. I've got other things like I don't know, your BOA system coming off your shoe, rocks in your shoe, or in transition. Sometimes I've put gum in my shoes and I've forgotten I put my shoes on. Little things like that. I mean, those are all things that we've got to deal with on race day. But having the right mental approach is really, I think we keep circling around back to that, just to deal with the problem in as best a way as you can and not get upset. Don't panic, and most of the issues you can solve.
Yeah. Don't do triathlon angry, upset, pissed off, whatever the case may be.
Oh, that's right.
And I get it. It can be an emotional day.
Yeah.
It can be really, really emotional,
hmm
especially when things aren't going how you think they should go. And
yeah.
honestly, like I pride myself in keeping calm. If you want to get upset when you finish. And I've
Yeah.
been really upset when I finished, right? But in the moment, solve the problem, get to the
hmm
finish, drive home, bitch and
hmm
complain to your wife or your husband all the way home. They really don't care, to be honest
yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
And my wife knows, like the couple hours after the race or later in the day, I'm going to be complaining about something, and
Yeah.
she's like, "Oh, that's yeah, that's really unfortunate that
Yeah.
But like once again, my wife, she's so supportive, and I know yours is too.
Yeah.
She doesn't care if I finish fifth, third,
Mm.
20th. She's happy about they're doing it and
That's
like
right.
and living
It's
my
the
life
experience.
and
Yeah.
enjoying the experience.
hmm
And I think we get really caught up in that. And I think we talked about this earlier, a few weeks ago. This year for me is the year of really focusing on enjoying the experience and
Yeah.
not caring as much about the results. And
Enjoy the journey is going to be our theme. So that's where, and I got to add, Rick is going to do St. George with his one by. So,
all
uh,
right, but you know
he's
what? When you can put out 5 watts per kilogram, maybe it's
yeah.
a little easier. Up Snow Canyon.
It's all about gear ratio, though. So if you can get the right gear ratio on a one
Yeah,
by, you're fine.
yeah.
So it's because it's your it is having the right range, and so now you can get 12 gears in the back. You've got a little bit more option, and so yeah, Rick says, do your best, be happy with that. As many cannot do what we do, and
Yeah.
that is really important. Is that I hear people say, "Oh, I did just the sprint race." Well, you're doing a triathlon, and that is admirable, and it is I love the sprint races, and just as much as I love the long distance stuff. So
And I love what he just said is like many can't do or don't have the ability to do what we do, and many could care less what we do,
yeah, right.
have no idea what it. Even members of my family, like, oh, how did you do in your last marathon? Oh
Mm,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I did good. Like they just want you to be happy,
no,
right?
that's
And they
right.
want to just kind of once again keep that in context.
That's right. I just need another sticker for the car.
So all I need is another medal on the wall.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, this has been fun. This is
Yeah,
race
thanks, and
day
thanks to
minutes.
everybody. That's some of the
Yeah,
awesome comments.
yeah, really good comments. Thanks for the
And
love.
next week our plan is
We are going to talk with some other experts in our local region. We're going to talk with Max Jones and Brian Chandler
Yep.
about some functional movement tests that they do, and we'll go through that.
Yep. Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Hey, have a good weekend.
Yeah. You got any special training plans this weekend? What do you got going on? Clean the garage?
No,
Which
we
I-
did that. We did that. So that wore me out. No, now I can't find anything.
Yeah, when it's messy and there's tools everywhere, it's easy, right? You know.
I knew where everything was. Now I don't. So it's all good. How about you?
Um, I'm actually doing the USMS Master Swimming 1 hour challenge tomorrow.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I've never done it before, so I got
Yeah.
the swim straight for an hour and see how many
Yeah.
yards I make.
That's a great.
Yep. And then on Sunday we're going to Death Valley.
Oh,
Bree's
good.
going to do a hike, and I'm going to do a big bike ride while she's
Oh,
hiking.
nice. Oh, I
I
love that.
prefer biking, and she prefers hiking. So
That's good. Hey, on your 1 hour swim, the way
Yep.
that I've done that in the past is I have to have a distance in mind, and then I shoot for it, as opposed to trying to swim hard for an hour. I said, okay, in an hour, I should be able to do more than 4,000 yards. And so
Okay.
now that gives
I got to
me,
do some math tonight.
yeah, that's right. So now it gives me a target, because we're not used to swimming for time, and
Yep.
swimming for time is harder. I think that's me, but
Yeah.
some people like doing that. But
The interesting thing is, like, I'm gonna have the goggles, the form goggles, so I actually can
oh yeah,
tell my pace on every 25.
yeah, that's good.
And the one thing I was trying to think of is actually not even thinking about the time. It's every time I turn, I'm gonna set it to DPS, distance per stroke,
Okay,
and I'm shooting for a particular distance per stroke to
okay,
try
yeah,
and keep that be
yeah,
the minimum
good.
the entire time. Because we talked about it last week, that I know, like, the more fatigued I get, the worse my distance per stroke is.
Yep,
And I need to just try and relax and go
yep,
long, and especially for an hour swim. But I do like the idea of because I was actually trying to think, like, how far can I go?
yeah, right.
I haven't actually done the math yet. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Cool.
It's gonna be a fun day.
Awesome. Well, enjoy
Yep.
Death Valley.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.
All right, sounds good. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.